What If I Told You a supergroup sold 5 million albums and then their record label paid them $1 million to disappear? They had the songs, the egos, and the sales, but the industry decided their time was up. They were a rock and roll powerhouse built from the pieces of other legendary bands, only to be told their sound was worthless. Here's how a band at the top got paid to vanish.
Like, subscribe. Thank you.
So it's the late 80s, and the rock world is a weird place. A lot of the heroes from the 70s and early 80s were finding their footing in a scene that was changing fast. You had Tommy Shaw, the guy with the golden voice from Styx, who was out on his own trying to make a solo career happen. And then there's Jack Blades, the bassist and singer for Night Ranger, a band that got pigeonholed by their own massive power ballad, Sister Christian. Their label just wanted more ballads, and it was crushing the rock and roll solo of the band. And then, in a totally different corner of the universe, you had Ted Nugent, the Motor City Madman, full-blown, unapologetic, loud and proud guitar maniac whose 70s swagger was feeling a little out of place in the era of hairspray and synthesizers. These three guys were like planets in different orbits, all experiencing a career lull at the same time. And that's when this genius A&R guy, a legendary music industry figure named John Colander, gets an idea. Colander was the dude who had basically resurrected the careers of Aerosmith and Whitesnake by giving them this modern polish and sheen. So he looked at Shaw, Blades, and Nugent and didn't see three musicians struggling. He saw the pieces of the monster that he wanted to assemble. He saw a supergroup. The idea was simple. Combine Shaw's melodic genius, Blades' killer songwriting and pop sensibilities, and Nugent's raw, untamed guitar firepower. To round it out, they brought in a powerhouse drummer, Matt Cardelloni, and they called themselves Damn Yankees. And when they got in a room together, something just clicked. It wasn't forced. The chemistry was instant. Ted brought the fire, the crazy riffs that were pure, uncut rock. Tommy and Jack brought the hooks, the kind of melodies that get stuck in your head for days. They put out their first album in 1990, the self-titled Damn Yankees, and it was a smash. The record was this perfect blend of hard rock muscle and radio-friendly polish. It had rockers like Coming of Age, then it had the big one, the power ballad to end all power ballads, High Enough. That song was freaking everywhere. Shot up to number 3 on the Billboard charts. You could not turn on the radio or MTV without seeing this damn song in audio or video form. The album sold and sold, eventually going double platinum. They were huge. A supergroup that actually worked. It wasn't just a collection of famous names. They were a real band, and they were on top of the world. Touring like crazy, playing to massive crowds who screamed along to every word. It truly was the dream, if there ever was one. These guys whose careers were in a weird spot suddenly found themselves in one of the biggest bands in the country. So they do what other successful bands do. They go back in the studio to make a second album. In 92, they released Don't Tread. It was a great album. Had some solid tracks like the title track and another hit ballad, Where You Going Now? The album went gold, which is nothing to sneeze at. But it wasn't the monster that the first album was. While the band was trying to keep the momentum going, the world outside the studio was changing fast, drastically. A little band from Seattle called Nirvana released an album called Nevermind, and it was like a very large dinosaur coming and just dropping cow patties all over the 80s hair metal scene. Grunge was in. The polished, melodic hard rock that Damn Yankees perfected was suddenly being called dinosaur rock, speaking of dinosaurs. The party, for many of the bands of the era, was coming to a screeching halt. And inside the Damn Yankees camp, things were not perfect either. You had three massive egos in one room. Ted Nugent, in particular, was not a guy known for compromising. His whole career was built on being Ted Nugent 100% of the time. While his bandmates were seasoned pros, used to the give and take of a band, Ted was always a solo artist at heart. There were stories of tension, of clashes over the band's direction. Ted would later say it was all friendly debate, just guys making a case for the musical ideas, but the pressure was mounting. Adding to that, Ted's other passions sometimes got in the way. As many know, he's a famously avid hunter, and it wasn't just a hobby, it was like his full-blown lifestyle. And there were reports that the tour for the Don't Tread album even had to be rescheduled around his hunting seasons. It was a sign that for all their success, the members still had lives and priorities outside the group, but the seams were starting to show. However, they were still a platinum-selling act, so the next logical step was a third album. They had songs, they were ready to go. They went to their label, Warner Brothers, expecting to get the green light for the next chapter of Damn Yankees. But there was a problem. People at the label who had signed them and championed them were gone. There was a whole new regime in charge, and they had a very different idea of what was cool in the mid-90s. They listened to the band's new material, and according to Ted Nugent, they basically told them it sounded too much like Damn Yankees. Ted, in his typical fashion, was absolutely pissed off. He recounted in an interview saying, if AC/DC goes in the studio and somebody goes, that sounds like your other stuff, in a negative way, you might want to sucker punch that motherfucker. That's who we are. Of course it sounds like us. We're us, you dumb fuck. Well, the label, fully in the grip of the grunge revolution, saw Damn Yankees not as a cash cow, but as a relic. They didn't want another album of polished hard rock. They wanted something else. And this is where the story takes a turn from a typical band breakup into something else entirely. The band and the label were actually at a standoff. The band wanted to make the music they were known for. The label didn't think the music would sell anymore, so the new bosses at Warner Brothers made them an offer. But it wasn't an offer for another record. It was an offer to get the hell out. According to Jack Blades and other reports, the label literally paid them $1 million to not record a third album. Think about that. A company paid a band that had sold over 5 million records, a fortune, just to dissolve their contract and disappear. It was the ultimate music industry insult. Kind of like at a gig I was playing with a band one year, where there's this old guy trying to pick up on this young chick. So he sticks a couple $100 in my hand to split up with the band to stop playing so that he could try to dance with her to the jukebox. Didn't work out so well for him, but it definitely worked out great for the band. But it was the label basically saying, we believe in you so little, we would rather lose $1 million right now than risk having to promote another one of your albums. For the band, it was a really whacked out situation. They had massive success, and now they're being handed a check to stop being successful. So they took the money. And just like that, Damn Yankees was over. The breakup, it was quiet. No big public fights or dramatic press releases. The members just went their separate ways. Tommy Shaw had already been talking with his old band Styx, and he went back to them full time. Jack Blades revived Night Ranger. Ted Nugent went back to being Ted Nugent, releasing solo albums and shooting animals in his backyard, or whatever else he was up to. For years, the members gave different reasons for the split. Tommy Shaw said that they ran that thing until the wheels fell off. Ted Nugent blamed the dumbfuck label of executives, but also admitted that all the members were eager and horny to get back to their foundational bands. They saw it less as a breakup and more as everyone returning to their true homes. It was a supergroup that, in the end, was never really meant to be a permanent marriage. There were a couple attempts to get the magic back, though. Around 1999, John Colander, that A&R guy who put them together, tried to reunite them for a new album on his new label, Portrait Records. They even recorded some material, but the timing was off. Tommy Shaw was now fully committed to that rejuvenated Styx, and leaving them to do a Damn Yankees album would have put his bandmates out of work, a tough position for him to be in. So the third album, sometimes referred to as Bravo, was shelved. The moment had passed. The members remained friends, even playing together on rare occasions, but a full-blown reunion never materialized. And the story of the Damn Yankees became rock and roll legend. It wasn't about drugs or creative differences in the classic sense. It's a story about a band that was created by the music industry, became massively successful, and then was brutally and efficiently erased by that same music industry when tastes changed. They were a casualty of a musical war that didn't even want to fight. They're paid $1 million for their own execution. To my subscribers, you frigging rock. Thank you so much. If you haven't had a chance, smack that subscribe button, join the family, and also hit that like button. Thank you for watching.